This is
Go,
getting
go,
race.
go, 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 go! I want to go to sleep.
Please, guys. Please,
Please die, please fucking die.
Let's
Let's fucking go!
Let's fucking
Let's fucking go, boys.
God.
Oh.
We won.
Maybe not that.
Pump. This is it.
Come on, we got this!
Got killed.
Let's go!
Yes! Oh, fuck yes!
Fuck yes!
New show. Welcome everybody to MogTalk, episode 258. If you guys are unfamiliar with MogTalk, it's a show based around a Final Fantasy XIV community discussing everything from Savage Raiding to Chocobo Racing. Today we're going to be talking about the World Race coming up in just less than 48 hours now. We're going to get there almost less than 30-something hours. I don't know math really with time, but it's coming up soon. And so to hold a good discussion, we're going to bring on some amazing people. I'm going to have them all introduce themselves so I don't have to do it. It makes my life easier. And I'll start from the top and go around clockwise. Narrlocke. Why can't I say that right? Narrlocke. Can you tell everybody who you are?
That's me. I'm raiding with Neverland. I'm one of their healers.
Okay. You're a little bit lower than I remember. Let me see if I can turn you up.
I just woke up. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. All right. So from Neverland, Narrlocke's coming on. Then Sfia.
Yeah, that's me, Sfia. I play caster in TPS. Have done for a few years now. Frequent member of the show. Love always being here. Thank you, Frosty.
Yeah, of course. And then Sindalf.
Hey, I'm Sindalf. I play tank for TPS, mainly Dark Knight, and occasionally Warrior, but it's never actually used.
Okay.
I don't think you ever have for our team, have you?
Every
In this
so
group.
often, like when
I
you
mean,
guys
like in
make
Prague.
me. In Prague now, because
Yeah.
it's not
It's
Dark
been-
Knight.
yeah. It's kind of been bad.
Okay. And then last, we bring on Lythi, who's not on one of the World Race teams, but will be helping and has been helping with the event that we're doing for the World Race. Lythi, tell everybody who you are.
Yeah, hi guys. I'm Lythi. I'm kind of Frosty's replacement on the World Race team until his kid leaves him more time to do that stuff again. No, I'm just joking. No, usually I'm an esports caster and I do a lot of stuff, and I do play Final Fantasy a little bit. I love the game just as much, so trying to get involved as much as I can. While I don't have time to play, though.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I understand the time issues. I will say, Lythi has been doing a great job helping out. He did almost everything for the management organization of the ultimate event that we had on this channel, and has been helping out greatly with all the other events, especially this one that's coming up. So definitely appreciate him coming on and helping keep this alive while I am trying to raise a now 6-month-old baby. Or 6-month-old baby.
It's been 6 months already? What?
It's been
6 month years.
Yep. But things have gotten to a point to where it's a little bit more manageable, and I think I can help out and get this next event going. And then after that, we'll see how everything turns out. You guys may notice there's a direct relief charity thing on the channel. I'm testing Twitch's new feature out to see how that will work, if it's something that we could maybe use in events. Don't pay it any mind. If you want to throw $1 towards direct relief, go ahead and do it. But I just put something on there so I can see what it looks like from our side when we use charities through Twitch. But with all that being said, we're here to talk about the World Race, and we brought on 2 World First teams to discuss the last 2 World First teams that have gone in any of these races, who are both competing tomorrow. And I'm hoping, the show may be a lot of I can't comment on certain things that we, but that's okay. We'll still do our best here. first, I want to ask, obviously, if you guys haven't guessed by the tone of a lot of our voices, we're all kind of tired. I can say probably a lot. Sfia, Narrlocke, Sindalf, Lythi, we're all tired from all the organization and all the prepping and everything else going into the event. But, you know, I'm just going to ask generally, how are you feeling besides tired, maybe?
Tired is probably the major sentiment going on right now. We should be going to sleep in about 30 minutes to an hour from now to wake up tomorrow at the right time.
We're
I'm staying up
actually
late for
throwing
this.
Don't say that.
No, it's good. Always love being here. You know that.
Oh, Jesus Christ. If you guys come on and you're like, something bad happens in a race and you're like, it's because we came on MogTalk, I'd feel like shit.
Yeah. I'm actually just preparing excuses. That's the only reason I'm here.
Okay.
So,
It's the clapback for the TPS command, Frosty. You had that one coming for a long time.
No, I don't, man. That was necessary. There's no reason why I shouldn't have put that in there. Jesus, man. That's like half of the chat during the event. So it's so bad.
That's so toxic.
I'm gonna feel even worse now that we lost.
Oh, Narrlocke, how are you doing?
So I was laughing at the chat thing.
Don't worry, I'll put one in there for Neverland too.
I'm tired too. You know, we talked about streaming this tier, but we haven't really done much over the last what's the word I'm looking for? We haven't done much over the last couple months, so that discussion kind of just didn't happen until like a week or two ago, and I guess that was too short notice for some people because we have some people in our group who are just like very uncomfortable with publicity in general, like people who've never been on here or anything, so ended up not happening.
I will say Zepp is one of my most frequent guests. I don't know most frequent guests, but he's a very common guest on MogTalk. But I'm not sure about everyone else. So
We've talked about that too, possibly streaming, and I mean there's the obvious discussions of like whether or not it gives an advantage to other teams or not, things like that. But other people are also not super comfortable with like publicity and being out there in the spotlight. Like when DSR happened, I think only Sfia and I realized exactly just how many eyes were on our team at the time. And I mean, I think for both of us, it was like relatively fine. But I think halfway through the tier, or like the fight, the rest of the team started noticing because our Discord started blowing up, Twitter started blowing up. And I think that got to people after a while because it's like, you got a bunch of people who are just used to sitting in their rooms, playing games, doing nothing else, or just like living their lives and working. And suddenly everyone's got eyes on you and being like, what's going to happen? And there's a lot of pressure that comes with that too that I don't think a lot of people talk about.
Yeah, for Dragon Song and I'm sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say the core of it, like our team is majority just like shy gamers, right? And so the more outgoing ones of us, like myself and Sindalf, who stream a bunch and all that stuff, it's not so much of a problem. But a lot of people kind of haven't been in that situation before. And I was going somewhere with this. Essentially, it's not so much that like it's a massive, like, sure, it makes you worry a little, like anxious, I suppose is the correct word, but it's more to do with people's expectations, because we'd actually been pretty successful up until DSR. And then because people's expectations were obviously high, like I remember the general consensus was, that they win and nobody comes close. And you got people talking about the TPS gap and stuff. Like that's always been a meme, but people think that. And then as soon as people think that, then it kind of, people in the team feel like they have to live up to those expectations, and it's never healthy. If it, like, it's something that we hadn't talked about nearly enough, and definitely had like a negative effect on the team.
Thanks, Nar. Jeez.
I just work here.
So, because you were saying there was that started having a negative effect when you guys were doing the. Never mind. Just pieces. Something
DSR.
up.
Oh no, it's like
Yeah.
regardless of the other teams, it was all about like it's not a PvP event. It's PvE. It's like how fast you can, how well you guys can play. And we know that we didn't play up to our own standards, and that was a pretty big contributing factor, I think. So the streaming thing's been kind of benched for a while because of that. I think it's been pretty good, and we've been super focused as well because of that. Like, I remember before DSR, there was a lot of kind of back and forth and almost like distraction in the conversation about do we stream, do we not, and then all the things that go on within that, and it's just a whole lot of extra organization, which can be simplified, but we're all like not familiar with that sort of thing. Like none of us have, like, you organized a massive event and like what that would entail and all those sorts of things. So it just ended up being just a pretty big net negative, even when it didn't happen.
Okay. So I get it. You're blaming me now, Sfia. All right. I see how it is, dude.
Sure. Yeah, we'll say that.
Man, well, I mean, here's the thing, though, right? I don't expect the rating scene in Final Fantasy XIV to ever really calm down much. I do think it's going to grow. I mean, maybe it's not going to be as hype as like the last Savage, just because it wasn't the very first one that came out. I don't know what it's going to look like. We're doing our best to try to put on like a decent event for it and everything. But it may be calmer. I think that was coming off of like one of the highest peaks Final Fantasy XIV's ever had. And I don't know, do you feel like a lot of that hype and eyes on Final Fantasy XIV has gone down a little bit?
I would say yes.
I think there's probably as many eyes. I think it's just not as hype now. It was fresh and new at the start of this expansion for a lot of people. Now they'll probably be invested and involved, but they won't be as like, oh, this is a brand new experience for me. They kind of know what's there now. It's not the novel thing. It's just the thing they know now. Yeah. I'd imagine.
When all the new players started coming over from like WoW and other games and Twitter memes, all that stuff, I saw a lot of people saying, "Oh, there's so much to do. It's so fun." And it's like, yeah, because you're doing like 4 expansions worth of content, and then you finally make it to the end. And one of the things I've been doing recently is like live letter reviews afterwards. But the thing is, I realize how many people don't get that 14 is on a cycle. Like, you don't have to watch the live letter. You know what you're going to get. You only need to see like 2 slides, and that's it. You know exactly what you're going to get. SE does not really deviate. But all the new players coming in don't really realize that. But now that they've consumed like 4 expansions worth of content, it's like, what's left for them? So some of that hype is going to die down, and the Endwalker launch kind of also didn't help with some of that. Just because, like, I had friends who
Yeah. I keep forgetting about that. I don't know if it's like one of those things where you just forget about it to protect yourself. You know what I'm talking about?
I know what you mean.
You forget that these things happen because they're just so traumatizing.
I had friends who had just started playing around that time who were like playing every day, every chance they could. But that's kind of like the impulse addiction that people get when they find something they like and they just want to go in on it really hard for a while. And then something stopped them, which was, we can't log into the game. And they just stopped playing. And they only recently had started back up like 5 months later. That's why it's like, you can see SE doing a lot more now, trying to make sure that no matter what happens, players are able to log in and play the game. Because that not only like hurts the community, but it hurts their bottom line at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, a good example of that is we had a major patch in 6.2 and they only have an 8-hour maintenance. Usually it's 24. Every major patch. So like even something small like that has been massively overhauled. So they're just trying to have people in the game, not create systematic problems like that.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, like, let's just say that this like does go into an up curve, because this kind of goes into the point that I was trying to talk about earlier. It's more of like, if Final Fantasy XIV hits that next level of, hey, there's a lot of actual esports companies, like we have Echo playing, and it's like a big thing for them. And there's going to be maybe some other groups starting to get interested and maybe turning this into a bigger kind of esports scene. You're definitely going to be in a spotlight then. It's not like you can hide as much. How do you feel about that? How would your team feel about like more eyes and more growth overall?
We've talked about this in the team a lot, so I kind of want to hear what Narrlocke has to say specifically because I know individually players in that team, but I don't know. I guess their sentiment as a group.
Can you run the question by me one more time?
That's okay.
I didn't quite understand.
So Final Fantasy XIV, could grow into like a similar to WoW kind of esports scene with big companies coming in, a lot of eyes on the teams that are raiding constantly. We were talking about how some of the players on the teams kind of get nervous with that kind of spotlight and everything else. Do you feel like if it kept growing and there was more and more eyes, your team would start to not want to do it anymore?
I think it's mostly just like a mental preparation kind of thing. Like, if they could see that that's where it's headed and they can, like grow into it, I'm sure they would probably be indifferent towards it, most of them. And there's a couple people that like interacting with that stuff, like Sepp and Skylar both do a lot of social media stuff.
Okay.
It's such a complex situation because there are definite positives and definite negatives to it, right? Like the idea of getting paid to raid sounds fantastic, like just to go live and raid, like that would be sick. But at the same time, being a competitive person, it does diminish, like I guess the overall competitive level of the raid tier. So like the part of me is like, yeah, I like money, but then there's the part of me that's like, I really like tight competition. I really like the act of competing. So there's that internal struggle there. So I guess for myself, at least, it's a matter of how much money does it take to outweigh the competition side, right? So
For me,
Go
go
ahead,
on.
Sindalf.
No, go ahead.
No, after you.
I was gonna say, like, for me, it's not like entirely about the money. And the money's nice, but the idea for me is that I mainly do this because I want to have fun, and I'm wondering what this can bring to the table that makes it a little more enjoyable. To have, like, let's say you had like an esports organization backing you, like, are they just going to pay you to raid? And like that's okay, and that's just taking a paycheck, and that doesn't sound very enjoyable to me entirely. But like, what else are they going to bring on top of it? Do they have more events they want you to do? Do they want you to talk to people? Just like, what's it going to bring that's going to like augment like my enjoyment of the game? Because I've been playing this game since ARR, since 2.0. And that's part of the reason I started streaming, is because you do something for like 8 years. And I mean, it's still fun, but maybe a tiny bit of that spark has left after 8 years of doing the same thing over and over. So adding like anything that augments it, makes it better, makes it more fun. That's what I'm hoping to get out of it. But I know not everybody feels the same way because, they see orgs, it's like, yo, cash, let's go.
yeah, one of the things that I think would be like the biggest selling point for me to be down for it, because I've played with this team has played together and had such few changes for so long, which is really like remarkable for Final Fantasy statics, is the idea of being able to just go to a live event and hang out and game with the guys in person, like eat together, that sort of stuff. Like it would just be a really, really cool experience. So just that concept alone is really cool to me. But again, we're talking like hypotheticals of what I see in WoW happening, which maybe it wouldn't be comparable in Final Fantasy,
So I think I have a little bit of a different perspective on the whole thing, since I've been kind of part of the whole WoW World First Race circle since like the very first one started up. And I think Final Fantasy is at the point, at the very same point WoW was with the start of Battle for Azeroth and the first ever tier where the top team or method at the time streamed. And there's always the discussion about where would have the World of Warcraft World First Race gone if Method lost that tier? Because the big discussion around World First rating always was, if we start streaming, can you still win? And everyone was always saying, no, there's too much of an advantage in not streaming to, well, kind of beat out. And World of Warcraft, on the one hand, is a little bit different, because I do think Final Fantasy, you get a severe advantage from having information that the other team does not have. So I think in that regard, it's a little bit different. But apart from that, just the growth and the attention that would be on the teams and everything that comes with it, potential interest from esports orgs to get into this sphere, I think it would be very, very similar to what we've seen with World of Warcraft over the past few years.
I mean, it's a weird situation. I do feel like Final Fantasy XIV is definitely different than WoW in the respect of the race. Yeah, it's a whole different environment, and there's so many other things. But I mean, like, it is possible. You know, I've had this discussion over and over and over and over and over and over and over. It's like a billion times with a billion different people. And I feel like there is a good situation for it. But the teams literally just have to be so freaking good, right? They have to be so insanely good that they can beat these teams. So, like, what if like an esports team broke up, then another esports team just gets created, another esports team gets created, but they're not under a banner anymore. They're just there to beat up the other esports teams. I mean, it's so easy to do that. You don't need heavy resources to make a team in Final Fantasy XIV. And so it is kind of weird from that perspective. I think when I was talking to Jeef a couple of weeks ago, you know, I talked to him about it too. And he was saying that his biggest concern is just that you put yourself at a disadvantage because there's a lot of like UI implementations that would be extremely great to have. But when you start streaming it with those UI options, do you think that you're going to get troll banned by someone, like a group of like 300 people all try to report you at the same time?
I think that anybody streaming this tier coming out that's racing in any way, shape, or form that is using something that they're not allowed to is definitely getting banned. Given after what happened post DSR, it's going to be an absolute disaster in the Twitch directory. That said, I think that the top teams have generally always been uploading their POVs like for the last forever, and they've only been acted on once. Like, we've seen things in certain clear videos over time that have been more or less suspect than other things, but only once has it really been a big problem. That was because of the big community backlash. So I guess we'll have to see again what the community does, because that's what Square acts on, right? They don't actively go out of their way looking for stuff. They never have. So again, I guess it comes down to the directory's response. But yeah, so the teams will be uploading their POVs, and then, you know, people will see what's there, what isn't, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's scary, man. And so I don't think I grasped like the whole situation that happened with DSR because I was busy doing other things. Can you, for me and maybe a few people, other people who didn't really hear about what happened, can you explain that a little bit more? Like, did a whole bunch of people get banned?
Narrlocke is the first hand, I get, or as close to first hand as you can get.
So there are people using. So you know how there's this thing in like the raiding community in this game where there's some third-party things that like people just kind of perceive as just okay to use, like socially accepted, like quick launcher stuff is there right now, and like ACT, that kind of stuff. So there's people using that stuff, and they uploaded a POV with some of that like stuff in it, and it caused a really big backlash. People were really upset watching the video because there was like ACT callouts and stuff in it, which, as Sfia mentioned, you know, it has been a thing that's in clear like world first videos since basically forever. But because that race in particular had so much more publicity with all the WoW players coming in and stuff, what happened was people got upset and were like questioning like, oh, what's all these third-party tools? And then 2chan, 4chan, and all that, those people started getting upset, and they were like, and then Square Enix actually released an official Lodestone post detailing like right after that happened, they were saying like, it's just a reminder, we don't support the use of third-party plugins, which is fine, right? Because, you know, that's their stance. And then because of that post, all the people on the forums were like, well, if this stuff isn't allowed, if they're saying this isn't allowed, we're going to start reporting these streamers that are using all these illegal plugins, and to prove that they really don't mean it. And they started reporting, they all mass reported one streamer. I think it was I don't remember who it was first.
Who was it? Oh, it was Bagel, I think.
Yeah, it was Bagel, yeah.
Yeah.
So they all dogpile and mass reported this streamer, and then he actually got banned. It's like he got his account suspended, and then these forums were like, wait a minute, this works, and they all just started ripping through the Twitch directory, mass reporting every single person with the plugin and getting a bunch of accounts suspended and stuff. And what happened was a bunch of like content creators went through all their old videos and just started deleting videos. Like, I don't want to get my account suspended, and it was just like a big thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then it culminated in someone in our group getting their account suspended. The person who uploaded the video with like the plugins in it.
So that's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, it was a JP player that was first. Someone corrected.
Oh,
I remember
Aurora?
that. Yeah,
Oh,
that
man.
happened first, and Bagel was like part of the. It was like the first one in the big wave right after that.
Yeah. There were like 1 to 10 viewer streamers getting mass reported as well. Like, it wasn't just the big names. They just went top to bottom and reported them all. It was really, really messed up.
Jesus Christ, man. Like, I don't even know what to say about that stuff. Because that
You should
huh?
I was gonna say, Frosty, sometime you should read that post that Yoshi P put out. I linked it in Twitch chat.
Can you link it in our
But-
group chat too? Just because I'm gonna lose that for sure.
It's actually kind of really interesting one because I think they, if I remember right, they mentioned in here also, they're like, oh, we recognize that some players want these like UI modifications and we'll add them eventually. I believe they say, but it'll take time.
I mean, they
Things
did
like that.
add one, didn't they?
That's pretty
They did.
happening, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm
Big
glad
numbers
that
on
they're
the
doing
buttons.
it. The UI is pretty bad.
Yeah. Well, I don't care as much. I'm a lazy person who doesn't do any add-ons at all. I used to have ACT way back in the day, and it was always just on the side so I could see numbers and I would know which one of my static mates were shit, so I could tell them to improve. Right, and that was really it. I never went like harder than that, and I stopped using that eventually too. Because why do I even need it? I go in a pub group and they upload my stuff for me anyway. So if I want to know what my DPS is and how I did, I'll just check, a certain website that will tell me all that information. So it was never needed for me, and I'm fine with the UI. But I can understand there are some improvements just like after you go to them, it's like going like 4K or going to like HD and you're like going back to standard definition. You're like, wow, this looks like complete shit, right? And so I haven't made that jump yet, so I'm okay. But
I think the biggest issue still with all the third-party tools is the fact that you can't do that stuff on PlayStation. So it's a good chunk of the player base that will never have access to it, and makes it even more urgent for the company to enforce rulings like that. Like, for example, World of Warcraft doesn't care because World of Warcraft is on consoles and everyone can have the same standards if they want to.
I don't think it's that actually entirely. Like, yes, that is partly true.
Not entirely, of course, yes.
Yeah. I think their main thing is that when, like, for example, if you're showing off the game to somebody who's brand new and you want to show them what the game has to offer, especially in terms of battle content, they usually, what people do is they link them like a popular raid clear video of a really good fight. And that could be something like T clear or DSR clear, something like that. Because that's like a good way of showing people like, oh, look at all these cool things that happen, the music in the background, content, all that stuff. And that's like, those videos have a lot of views on them and they are essentially advertising for Square Enix. But now there's something in there that SE did not expect there to be there. So it is advertising the game in a way they did not like. So because of that, there will be now a new player who starts up the game and they'll be like, wait, where are all these things that weren't there before? And that's a problem for them. I think that's like the big issue that SE takes with it, because you're representing the game in a way that they don't really want the game to be represented to not just like other players, but like potential customers.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, I don't know what it's like to look at. I haven't looked at a lot of WoW clear videos, but I assume like there aren't very many UIs that look alike in WoW clear videos. They're all super crazy, unique, full blast, insane.
Unless
These
it's
days they're a lot more
LGR, then it's all the
standardized.
same.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. We could actually, you know what? We already spent more than like 4 of the show on it, so we'll go past it. But I think like it is something that needs to be tackled, especially for the world race overall, and for me personally, it affects me in some regards. Although I don't know if I restream someone with an add-on if it matters because I'm not the player, so it might work out. But
imagine getting your account banned because you cast the radar.
I just want to, like, I think it's important to say that I can say, like, for virtually my whole team, that everybody would be really, really, really happy if Square Enix just said, if you use anything, you'll get banned. Because then right? Like, if you use ACT, see you later, permanently banned. You're never playing Final Fantasy XIV again. Like, anything at all would be like, cool, that's cool. We know what's up now. But unfortunately, that's not how it is. So, it makes this awkward little what is okay. People say ACT is fine. It's socially acceptable. It's, everybody's accepted that one. So then what's next? And it just becomes this awkward, like, is this okay? Is this isn't? Is this not? And then it's okay in some people's eyes and not okay in others. And it's just this awkward dance of.
They just need to put in like a cheat client or something, and just like where they detect the stuff, and then there you go. They lose half their data. How many players would they lose? How many people would quit this game if they couldn't use ACT?
You would probably actually lose quite a bit.
Yeah,
not for
You'd
ACT.
probably lose more from mods. Yeah,
yeah, mods in general. Unfortunately, every person I know who has started the game recently since Shadowbringers uses mods, all cosmetically, but they all do it. And I think that's a pretty large amount of the player base.
Yeah.
Or at least the player base that I know.
Sample size, Sindalf.
I am a biased sample size, but
yes,
that's just like what I've seen.
Yeah.
Just imagine you ban off all the RPers and other RPers for their 3D models.
And they can't do that weird dance and make lots of videos about a weird dance, someone chasing someone while they're doing a weird dance. Like, you don't see that pop all over the internet anymore. Yeah.
I love the RPers. They're great.
RPers are amazing. They do great for this game. Anyways, let's move on from add-ons, because I feel like we need to like dedicate a whole show to talk about that.
We're getting so close to Katy Perry. I'm so sad.
What?
That shit has been in my head for like 2 days now. I can't look at Twitter anymore, man.
Oh yeah, no, yeah,
right?
Yeah. I know. I've seen it. All right, and this was all, by the way, started by a question of me asking how you guys were doing. So I'm glad how you guys are doing adds up to, talks about TOS.
Unfortunately, it is when you're doing what we're doing, it's something that ends up on your mind frequently.
Yeah. Well, getting into the content with the World Race coming up. I do want to talk about some topics that are unique to this race. This is the first time I think that they actually released the second raid 1 week early, which is kind of unexpected. I mean, they also they allowed crafted gear to be crafted before the tier came out. They also now they're not patching Savage Knight, right? It's just gonna get clicked on.
There's been no maintenance notice. They've said that the duty will be available 2 hours after reset, which the reason they said they were doing that was to avoid reset time congestion when everyone's logging on. So that means that the servers are obviously already up if people are logging on at reset time. So it's just like, it's creating this really weird situation right now. It's uncharted territory. It's like, if you're racing, I think it's awful, but I can understand why it's good for a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm.
But man, it's real bad.
I asked someone who works at Square Enix, and they couldn't give me a straight answer about maintenance. And it's just like, they're probably not having it.
If it's avoiding like Sfia said, if it's avoiding reset time congestion, that means there's going to be congestion on reset time, right? So it implies the servers will be up. Plus, they've done something like this before. They did it when Blue Mage launched. They
also do it for every.
The NPC just phased into existence right when it was time for Blue Mage to launch. There's no maintenance.
Yeah, same thing for every seasonal event. Like, you've got all the screenshots of people falling off the tower as it disappeared when the beach one just finished. It's been technology in the game for ages. They just have never applied it to raid content, I guess.
That is going to be really, really weird. Although it will be kind of interesting from the stream side of things, because we'll get to watch where raiders are right before the release happens, and it'll be so... Okay, it wouldn't be fun. I'm sorry. I was going to say it would be so fun to see like streams crash, like get kicked out of the game as soon as they try to click on the NPC or just something crashes and it goes horrible.
Yeah,
Please,
you'll
no.
be watching people do dungeons for 2 hours before a raid drops.
Yeah, we're not
because
streaming
this
that.
happened.
Yeah.
I mean, it's content. That's part of the race now. We now have the essential equivalent of WoW raiders doing splits. You know how like that's really boring, right? Lythi, that sucks. Now you get to watch Final Fantasy
Welcome to
players
my world, guys.
do dungeons. It's
Don't
I
you
hate
wanna
it.
see-
Splits,
Don't you
2
want to see
weeks
the
of splits.
speedrun tech?
Oh.
Yeah. Now you
Wall
have
to
this.
wall?
Now you have this paradigm where you don't have to have a dedicated team of crafters ripping out all the gear and food and pots for you as fast as possible, because now we already have it a week beforehand, and we get 2 weeks of tomes.
So how is it impossible to get 450 tomes in 2 hours?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's 2 hours. You can finish a dungeon in like 13-14 minutes for 50 a pop.
Is that the fastest way to do it?
Probably with a with like a 4-man team of very good players, it's a little bit faster than Hunt Trains, I think.
Okay.
so yeah. There's a lot of stuff that's going to go into like there's some min-max stuff you can do for getting that done. But the 450, the tomes and the gear that we have available to us now means some really weird stuff for the balancing and the tuning of this tier, because they've said that they're not adjusting it to account for the extra gear that we now have, and that extra gear being 900 tomes worth of gear, extreme primal weapons just being on everybody already, somebody having a tome weapon that they're getting from the second and third fight combined and upgraded, an augmented left side piece, an augmented right side piece in the raid. So what's going to happen is people are going to zone into into the first fight, play like absolute shit, and then it's going to die like 2 minutes before Enrage anyway. This tier is going to be weird.
That's what already happens. Now it's going to be like 3.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess just back to the dungeon thing. Don't you get extra tomes if you go in with a new player that hasn't done it before?
Not
That's
the weekly
only
reset tome.
Okay.
It only gives you the old tomes.
The like poopy tomes, yeah.
Okay, just making sure there wasn't some weird stuff where people were just going to get a whole bunch of players or they leveled up characters to that point just so they can get the... No, they wouldn't.
No, I mean, even if you could, you don't need that to be able to... you have the whole 2 hours window, and you can cap in that 2 hours window, and going faster doesn't give you a benefit because like you just spend the rest of the time standing there waiting around, right? So.
I mean, mentally it may, right? So you don't feel as exhausted from having to do all that crap, but then I guess you have to do all the prep work for it. But anyways... how long do you think it's going to take? 1 hour to get all those tomes? Or you said 13 minutes a run.
You can preload a run before weekly reset. So you do one starting about 10 minutes before weekly reset happens, and then you just pull the last boss as weekly reset happens and get your tomes after that. So that's like, you start with essentially 90 head start, and then you have done pre-prepped a one-line Wondrous Tale, so you get another 50 for like a minute's work. So you're already starting with 140 tomes. So then you need to run, 5 extra dungeons, kill the first 2 fights, and you're capped.
Okay. So probably within an hour.
Just over an hour. Essentially, like, if it was any longer, it would start getting to, like, is this worth it territory, right? Because then not only can you get a couple extra hours sleep that night, which is huge, by the way. That's another thing that we should need to talk about later, because what's going to happen with the hours in this tier.
Don't tell me.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm not looking forward to that.
But if you're like pulling dungeons until raid time, like you're mentally like kind of in those dungeons trying to go fast and do all that stuff, which is just like, adding to the exhaustion as well. So if it wasn't as easy as it is to get these tomes, it would actually be like, is this worth it kind of discussion that would be going on.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that's going to be fun.
It's going to be great. We can cast some dungeon speedrunning.
No,
Frosty.
there's no way. We aren't doing
What?
it. No.
No.
I'd still rather
What
do
you-
the DJ thing. I don't want
Will you cast dungeons when
Ew.
they release the super hard dungeons coming out?
Yeah. It's because some
That'd
good
be
practice
sick.
for you.
I need to see what the situation looks like before I dedicate any mental resources to that.
I'll do it.
Can I say, by the way, that this expansion for you guys organizing events is insane. We've had
It's
first
wild.
Pandemonium, Ultimate, second Pandemonium, then we're getting Criterion Dungeons, and then we're getting another Ultimate after that. Like, it's just
We get
back to
PvP
back to back
tournaments
content.
back.
Are we getting Ultimate in 6.3?
They put it on the
That's
roadmap,
what
and they've
they
said nothing else
said.
about it. Yeah.
I can't see it.
They
I can't
have
see it.
they've claimed that it's coming in 6.3, but that's also happened before, I think. But I haven't said that they're moving it yet, and I think if they were going to, they probably would say something sooner than later.
I don't
Man.
think they like to disappoint people, so I don't think they will be.
Yeah,
They're going to be
find a way to
upset,
shove
but
it
they
in
do
there.
it.
but
I'm
I think
fairly
it's likely.
sure it's gonna come out before the next expansion.
Yeah, especially
sure.
because when Dragonsong got delayed, it's not like they spent the entire time between the delay and 6.1 just working on Dragonsong, right? They would have started like asset work on the next ones already. So the 6.3 Ultimate, already has a little bit of extra time compared to normal, I think. So it's pretty likely, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, now that you're like mentioning a lot of this stuff, it does make a lot of room or a lot of content for esports companies if they did want to come in here and get involved with it, right? So more than, I guess, I don't know. WoW has the MDI, the World Race, and sometimes some PvP stuff, right?
You have the AWC, which is losing a little bit of size at the moment. But on top of that, you have some one-off tournaments. You have the Great Push, which is kind of like the MDI, just the 2.0 format. You have a bunch of stuff.
Okay.
It's definitely interesting for esports orgs.
Okay. So it's not completely barren. But Final Fantasy can kind of get up there. I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll get in the Triple Triad tournaments and Chocobo Race tournaments and stuff like that, right? We could.
Frosty's weekly Mahjong tournaments, man. I'm
Dude,
telling you.
I'm this close.
Verminion?
For Minion too, man. All of it. I had this envision for like the last 2 years where I have the Frosty Winter Olympics and I just go through all these mini games of like competitions and just have these little tournaments for all of it. But we'll see. Anyways. So with all this being said, with the 1 week and all the other crap that's going on with it, are you I feel stupid asking this, but are you happy about it or not happy about it?
Not
I like it.
really.
Both.
Okay.
I like it.
It's a bittersweet, and some things are good, some things are not good. You're glad you get something, but it comes at a cost.
I think
I love it.
it's gonna be for the 99.9% of people who like play the game like normal people and aren't weirdos like we are. It's gonna be mostly just exclusively a positive change because now those like people who craft and also like have groups that they want to raid with, they can just like craft their gear in the first week and not have to schedule around their regular groups and trying to get everyone crafted everything so that their first raid day goes well, that kind of thing. I think it's exclusively a benefit for like 99% of people, and the only people it really negatively impacts is basically people who are like rushing super hard right at the start because having more stuff at the start kind of takes away some of the fun of trying to get ahead as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So the crafting stuff, most of the people who craft that I know are actually pretty upset about it because it's no longer like a time crunch and a time critical period to get gear out where the fastest people make the most gil now. It's just everybody kind of just makes a little bit. And I know people are mostly unhappy about it. I think in terms of practicality and as a person getting the crafted gear, it's made it a hell of a lot easier, right? I'm not paying a ridiculous amount for it now. But it also kind of invalidates this team of crafters that we've worked with for ages as well. And again, it's a very me problem, right? And case specific. But no, it does suck a little bit in that regard. They're making less. But I also really, really enjoyed like the story. I watch all the cutscenes. I have done for forever. Thoroughly enjoyed it. So I like that part of it too. But the part that I dislike the most is that in a Savage tier where they both come out at the same time, it's all about that day, right? Your preparation beforehand is more about your functioning as a team. It's more about your individual skill levels and things like that. But when you have normal modes out for a week, it becomes less and less about how you perform on the day and more about your preparation for those fights and other things that you can do with the game to do that, which is actually, I've seen some weird shit around that is terrifying in terms of data mining and things that people are doing with their game clients and what they're enabling and disabling. And that's a whole fucking rabbit hole that is not good. So I just like that aspect of it, because I like the idea of the competition being, in the moment and not protracted over a week of sitting in normal modes for 10 hours a day. Not actually 10 hours. I've been doing a little bit less this tier.
Oh, okay. Narrlocke, how much have you guys done this tier for practice?
Definitely less than 10 hours total. They're probably doing more a day than we've done total.
Oh, that's me personally whenever I've got time.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So, I'm like, I mean, this is robot response, but I agree with both of you in the sense that this is great for anybody who isn't a world racer. Like, this is just an amazing change. It works very well for them. They get to actually enjoy the other content. I actually got to do the Extreme Primal for once in my life before everything disappeared, and that was really fun. I generally like that. And it's pretty good for everybody. Except if you're actually participating in the world race, this is awful. Because, yeah, everything Sfia said, like, the whole extra week, the extra prep you do. Unfortunately, there will be people out there who go out there and start looking up everything they can find about the Savage tier by looking through the files. They'll ruin so much of the stuff that I enjoy about the world race, which is doing as much as I can blind without anybody telling me anything about it. And that's just so much of that just goes out the window. And that's so just ultimately frustrating. I remember like talking with other groups before, and they're just in other tiers, and whenever they're given a lot of time, they try to come up with like any cheat tool they can do. They're like, oh, what can we do to make this so much easier for us? And it's just like, I don't want to do with that. I just want to play the game, man. I just want to play and have fun and have everything be as blind as possible so I can just have fun. Because I think that's where it's at. But it's like, as if this is week-long thing is going to be a thing, it kind of kills some of the enjoyment that I have.
I think in terms of having an equal playing field, a normal and savage release on the same day is the most fair. I guess what they could do, but they've never done, is keep everything that is in Savage out of the game until it becomes Savage Day and just repatch the game on that day, but they don't do that. They never have when it comes to split release raid tiers. So it always ends up going this way. And that's why I think I've said this in the talks that I've had with you, Frosty, before about like the first tier of an expansion always feels the most stressful because there's so many external factors that aren't just you going in there and playing well and problem solving as a team. It's just all this other shit.
Yeah. Put it this way, with the extra week that you have, there is another skill set that comes into play, which is like your ability to theory craft becomes a lot more important. Like when we were doing Asphodelos, we'd sit there, we'd look at the normal mechanics for the whole 2 weeks, and we came up with 1-to-1 mechanics that were in Savage, and especially P3S. There's a reason we cleared that fast enough, and that's partly why. Because we had enough time in the normal version to not only grind out like better exact positions that we would have messed up not given that week, we would have taken much longer because we would have died to things like the rotating Shiva circle type thing, but also just came up with solutions to mechanics that we had actually drilled out in normal mode. So the moment we saw it in Savage, it was like, yep, we know the solution. We already did this. And that's it. Like, I guess that's another skill to have, but it feels bad because it means not everybody's on the same playing field.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really like that.
Technically they are, but I feel like it rewards a different skill set than what is traditionally like Final Fantasy prog, right? And that's where it gets a little bit murky. But some people would probably like that fact, that the better you can conceptualize and theorize like sort of extrapolations of normal mode the better your chances are in Savage, which is cool in concept. But when it comes down to, and this is probably the thing I dislike the most about it, I like things being new, and I feel like the more you do in one day, or like the more condensed you make it, the more rewarding it feels. So if you have a week to sit there and look at normal mode and you've figured out half of a fight before you kill it, the amount you've actually learned in that one day is just smaller, right? And then when you get to the end of it, you're like, oh, that was cool. I really loved those 3 new mechanics that I'd never seen or thought of before. And so that feedback, that the sense of satisfaction you get from it is lower, which is also kind of another thing that is potentially in this tier where I feel like at the same time, the harder you work for something, the more rewarding it is too. And with the extra gear and the lack of balance changes that they've had to account for that gear, I worry that for some people, that sense of satisfaction from killing a fight, when you have that extra leeway now in terms of the damage you can do and the extra gear you're going to have defensively as well, may not make it as rewarding. You don't have to play as cleanly, especially in a week 1 Savage, which is like the tightest DPS checks that this game has now. That's like the last point they ever exist, week 1 Savage. Like ultimates are never tuned that tightly. Anything beyond week 1, you're then bloated with gear. This may diminish that for a lot of people, and that by playing worse, they can still clear. But then again, like it's that's just my take, and a lot of people probably feel differently too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sucks, dude. I hate it. I just wish we could go in and it would be super, like everyone just loads their game client. There's no extra stuff. There's no data mine. No one even thinks about it. We're in this happy land that I think Square Enix sometimes believes that we're in, because a lot of their enforcement is just messaging us and saying, please don't. And that's it. They just say, please don't do it. And it sucks. And then they come back and they start like banning and everything else, but they don't implement things like it depends on, I guess, your take on what is good information and bad information from data mining overall, right? But like they should have had a patch for Savage. If they don't have a patch for Savage, I feel like that's kind of BS. They have to do everything. If in a security world, in like an InfoSec world, this is horrible. You don't secure things by just saying, oh, make it really hard for you to find. You secure it by not making it available, right? So anyways, that being said, fun topics, guys. These are fun topics. Go ahead.
I kind of want to extend on the whole gear issue you touched on, because it makes me really wonder if they didn't account for the tuning for the better gear that the Raiders will have starting Tuesday. How muddled is the world ranking going to be in terms of top teams? Is it finally time to have your memes no longer be memes or dreams, but actually become reality? And are we going to see a Grats JP?
Are you trying?
It
Okay,
just
first
means
off,
that,
JP does great damage.
JP speed healers do great damage. Historically, pro groups haven't so much, other than Psylink.
Okay, fair.
Rusher's fan club.
Oh, that's so good.
That's so...
I missed
The thing about gear with this is that, I mean, you're right, we could see something, because when you start looking at other tiers, like Gaia and Promise is a good example, Shiva, what typically happens is Savage actually has a much harder DPS check than Ultimate. If you get to the end cleanly, you'll probably kill it, but it's not guaranteed. Like, you actually need to be putting in a little bit of effort, trying a little bit in order to make it. And there are groups out there who, despite having the mechanics, can't actually do that. So their solution is to either wait 1 week, grind out a little harder, or just go get weapons from the Primal. Because crafted weapons aren't good enough. They just need that slight extra, like, 0.5% to 1% edge, and they get it to work. Now, with gear, that's not the case anymore. But also, let's consider one more thing quickly, is that this tier is after this is the second tier. So anyone who's expecting an Asphodelos like DPS check, you're not getting that. Asphodelos DPS check was really easy, and they don't make the final fight as easy as the first tier final fight.
So do you actually think that this tier is going to have like maybe have some level of difficulty to it, that you're going to hit a wall still with like the gear and everything else?
If you play poorly, but I think it's just going to be similar to how Shiva was, because I mean they're not going to make it. If they make it too hard for gear, and they don't raise the minimum eye level requirement, then you've just made it harder for like every pug under the sun, even when they get gear.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, I find that to be unrealistic.
The thing about Savage DPS checks compared to Ultimate specifically, I think, is that generally speaking, Savage mechanics, especially the ones that end up being kind of crucial in overall like fight design, things like Light Rampant, things like Lions, they generally have a lot of different solutions, as opposed to Ultimate, which feels a lot more, here's the intended solution, or it's during downtime or something like that. So your ability to influence how much damage you're doing through good strategizing plays much more of a factor in Savage typically. So that's why when you see week 1 strats and groups struggling week 1, it's because they're using something where like their melee are all running to the wall for 6 seconds at a time or something like that. And that's what then compounds on that and causes a hard DPS check as well. So by having all this extra gear, it means that maybe the thing that ends up happening is the poor strategizing then doesn't get punished in progression. So your things where you do have, your 2 melees running to the wall, it doesn't really matter anymore because you have all this extra gear and this weapon and all this stuff. So it's it all adds up, right?
Yeah, and the way I've explained that to people in the past was typically that with week 1 gear, like full crafted gear, in the final fight, you can usually afford 1 downtime strat. Where, assuming you have a good group of people, you can afford 1. Like, you can do 1 really bad Light Rampant strat where you're running around in a circle instead of everybody being able to hit the boss, for example, or downtime Lions where everyone's at the wall. You can do 1 of those. You can't do 2 of them throughout the fight. If you do 2, you're not making that check. You do 1, the check's going to be tight, but you can do it if everybody's playing well. But if you do it the way SE probably intended, which is most likely going to have some good chunk of uptime, you probably would have been able to make the check. But people can't figure that out week 1 until a few days in when some group figures it out. So with all this gear, maybe you can afford 2 downtime strats.
Okay.
Don't know.
Narrlocke?
Depends on how downtime it is.
I haven't heard from you in a little bit, so I just want to see how you're feeling. Hopefully check in to make sure you're still awake too.
I might be.
Okay. How do you feel about the DPS checks?
I don't know. I didn't have much to add. I feel like they said a lot of good stuff already. I guess the way that I always view it is that whenever I look at this kind of stuff, I always think about how it affects like party finder players more so than like World First Race, because with World First Race we'll always find something to squeeze to try to get an advantage, right? So usually I think they're better off not balancing around that because it'll always be there. So I'm personally like a big fan of the 1 week delay, because I guess I view it the opposite way in the sense of fairness, in that with the 1 week delay you don't gain an advantage from having like a team of crafters making you your gear immediately on server up while you're raiding. Like I guess from my point of view, I view that as less fair, but it's all a perspective thing. I think there's always going to be some kind of advantage one way or the other, no matter how they do it.
Okay.
Probably not a bad point, because I mean, historically we have had in TPS, we've had an amazing crafter team that from what I've been told has gotten us like all our gear way faster than everybody else. Like, I think after the first fight of Asphodelos, we had like 90% of our gear for the second fight, I think it was. Like, we killed the first boss, and then it's like, yep, here's the rest of it. We have all your crafted gear, fully pentamelted, everything.
I guess
Which is
what I'm thinking of when I say that is I'm thinking of some like group of 8, like just a standard casual group, a group of 8 people who now they have easy access to the gear and they can pentamal beforehand and they have all these free primal weapons, and now the server can go up and just any old group can just go in and take a crack at it just to see how they do, you know what I mean? They don't need all this pre-existing like infrastructure. They can think about stuff in normal mode beforehand. So I guess from my perspective that seems more fair to me.
It does seem more fair, though I do think getting the crafter team together is a skill that people need to have in order for prog, because there's like not much point to crafting otherwise, at least from my perspective. Other than keep making food in pots, please. Those are great. But like there's not as, it gives them more, a lot of them like it because it gives them more of a purpose for what
it definitely lowers the barrier to entry for sure. It does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, and then go ahead.
Oh, I'm just saying it's a good thing. Like the world racing it's like it's fun, right? We wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun, and the more people who can do that, the better. So I wish there was a better way that could remove the negatives of the situation that we're currently in and just capitalize fully on the positives.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like when we're talking about the crafting side, like the people who do it are basically doing it because it's a requirement, right? And the people who are really good at doing it will benefit from it because that's one of those things you can benefit from it. But it's not necessarily meaning that it's good game design, right? They're filling a hole that's there. It could be better overall for everyone that didn't exist, but because it was there for so long, the community who kind of went and put so much time and effort to be good at it, like their efforts are completely diminished. And so it is kind of like an Armageddon for all those people, but it's not like a bad thing for the game, if that makes sense. I don't know.
I mean,
so I'm feeling like in general it really seems like, and Square said that this whole tier, this 1 week early release, it's an experiment, but it feels like they're trying to break up the meta of the kind of savage release, that day one prog and everything that comes with it. And as you guys said, it makes it more accessible. 99% of the player base probably are gonna love it, and meanwhile the World First Raiders are gonna absolutely hate it, which I can relate to that. I can see where that's coming from. But I'm really curious where Square is going to go with this whole thing once this whole thing is over, and what the points for us are to keep an eye out for during the race. What could be indicators of this went well, this went horrible, this is going to come back to haunt us, and this is going to stay around, and it's going to be really nice. Stuff like that.
I think they might keep it. Actually, I'm pretty sure they're going to keep it. That's my theory. They might make some slight adjustments to maybe stagger some of the other content out by a week as well. Like they could do the Primal as well if they care that much about World Race, which I don't think they really do.
Or even the tones, right?
So
yeah,
I do want to clarify something, at least in my opinion, from my understanding in the conversations I've had with the people I've had conversations with at Square Enix and overall. I think they care about the World Race, but they don't program the game for the World Race, right? They know what the World Race is. They know it's something that gets people interested in Final Fantasy XIV. They know it's a spectacle. They know it's something that players enjoy, but it's not part of the game, right? It's not something that they've made the game to do. So when they are making these changes and everything else, it's usually not going to be with, hey, let's make the World Race better. They'd be sad if it like destroyed the World Race or something else, but they understand it's not like Final Fantasy XIV. Right?
That is completely like the way that it should be, right? There's no arguing that. The majority of players are definitely benefiting from this and the changes that they've made.
I was about to say, I think they do care. Like they definitely pay attention to it when it happens, right? But they don't account for it really when they're designing stuff. And I was about to say, maybe it's a hot take in this room of people to say, but I think that's a good thing. I think they shouldn't really account that hard for World First Races, because like I said, we're always going to find some bullshit to squeeze out, right? So like no matter what they do.
I mean, just imagine they balance around World First Race like they do in World of Warcraft.
No, don't do that.
5 weeks
That's
of
a bad
training,
idea.
and bosses never are the same again. Can I get an F in chat for Laundress, by the way?
They should never do that, but like I just think that like with this like week delay, I think they will keep it though, just because it is good for the entire community. And they've said this before with with expansion releases, they don't want people to feel like stressed and like required to have to just go straight into the raid. That's part of the reason they do the 2-week delay. And I think as people have started to do other kinds of content, like, you got more people doing the MSQ, people actually caring about the raid story, everything else, they want to keep doing that. Because when new content for like battle content drops, there's a certain subset of players that are like, oh, we're all going to do this, and you're part of this team, you got to come too. And they kind of probably don't want those people to feel like they're missing out, because they are missing out on like the story and everything else. By the time they get out of Savage, whole story's been spoiled for them. And that's kind of a shame.
Again, when it comes to will they continue this, it is almost like 100% certain that it will continue. Because the thing that he said the most during all of this and talking about it is that we want feedback, right? We're testing this. Tell us. And everybody, bar us in this call, just net benefits from this. So, of course, the feedback is going to be overwhelmingly positive. So I think it's pretty safe to say that it will continue. And again, I would like to see some minor adjustments to it in terms of the way that they release the content into the game and things like that would be amazing. But again, it's like there's no way that they don't. And if they went and reverted it back to the way that it was with all the positive this has had for people, I would be legitimately like dumbfounded. It's a terrible decision if they don't.
They just need to make improvements to, to like make some of the holes that are out there, make things less abusable. And again, that's my harshest criticism for Square Enix is that they don't fortify things as much as they should. And they put the trust into the player base to do the right thing, and that just doesn't work. At least in the NAEU communities, that just doesn't work.
I will tell you the underrated part of this 1-week delay is that if you're doing the world race and you work full time, you actually now get to ask for time off with more than 10 days of leeway, which is really bad and has been bad for years. And now I actually was like, oh, I get to ask off like a normal human being instead of trying to make deals with my manager for months.
I made I think most people had a pretty good guess about the release time window for Savage and everything else, and I was able to get it scheduled off a while back, so that worked out pretty well for me. It's the first time I'm really scheduling off a whole week. Just have a lot of stuff going on. Outside of this, I'm also going to do commentary for the PvP event. It's happening on Thursday and Friday, so there's a lot of stuff going on.
It's a busy week.
Players typically are able to find out, but it's like you have sometimes 1 or 2 weeks, it's going to be this week or the next week.
Right.
And depending on like how corporate your job is, you have to know. So you take a risk and say it's probably this one, but if it's not, I'm screwed. And the amount of times we've gone into the world race with that on our plate is like more than 3 probably.
That's
at
fair.
This point where that's been a case, and we've been waiting for the worst case scenario, which this tier it actually might have been, because I had to be in the office all week last week and I couldn't get off, so it kind of saved me in the end.
Oh yeah. Well, go ahead.
Am I able to bring up something I saw in chat? Someone said something really good. I think
Depends on how like horrible it was. No, go ahead.
It's not.
It's fine. Yeah.
So I saw Extrahu3 in the chat. I'll just read it verbatim. He said, "Feel like 1 week delay will also boost views for streaming teams during Savage Race, since there won't be spoilers for those who did everything during the first week."
Yeah.
Good
That's
point.
probably very true.
Yeah, it is a good point. Also because people won't be like actively logging in to do all their own stuff right when people are starting their race, right? Because, for the first 24 hours of a patch, people who are playing the game, they're like doing stuff, right? So now that Savage is in its own patch, or 1 week later on its own thing, the people who are streaming their groups will probably get a really big boost in viewership.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I wasn't actually thinking about that, but you're right. There is a huge, viewership that do care about being spoiled, and they won't watch this stuff because of it. And the only thing that they would be spoiled is whatever they throw at the end of the last Savage. But it's not going to be, hopefully, story relevant. It's just going to be nice spice on top of everything, right?
Yeah, it's like even not just spoilers, but also people just like aren't so busy doing their own new patch stuff.
Yeah.
That's the case in the directory like all the time. On patch day itself, like viewership isn't that great because MSQs come out. You're not going to go watch a stream of someone else do it. You're going to do it yourself. That's just the nature of MMO games, right? So it's definitely a net positive for that as well. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. I do want to ask you guys this to kind of go on to the next topic here. I don't know how much you're going to be able to tell me or how much you feel comfortable telling me, but looking at what you have done for normal so far, is there anything that you feel okay sharing with what you believe we should be expecting for Savage? It's okay if not.
All I remember from doing the normal modes is that when we went through them the first time, I was really disappointed at how it felt like this set of normal modes had like less stuff in them than normal. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Maybe it's just me. I think I was the only one who felt that way in my group.
They did, most of all of them are pretty much like 2, maybe 3 core mechanics just reused over and over. Yeah, you're right there. I guess the biggest thing is that I feel like more so this tier, there's going to be new stuff in Savage compared to before. Like a lot of the time I feel like going from normal to Savage in previous tiers, you just got new iterations of stuff you'd seen in normal, or you got like a twist on it. But I think there's just going to be more new shit in here, which is cool.
Okay.
I don't know.
In general, I had the feeling like recently when they've done bosses like we've seen in normal just this week, where they're just feel incomplete. The Savage versions usually have been pretty spicy.
Yeah, but I guess I'm just talking about like normal mode specifically, but my experience with a lot of the past normal modes is that sometimes you're surprised at how many mechanics from the normal mode are actually just exactly the same, like pound for pound, as the ones in Savage. Like after you do the Savage and you go back and do the normal mode afterwards, you're like kind of surprised how much there actually was like hiding in the normal mode. But I don't know, some of the normal bosses, especially the second one, it felt like they only had like 5 spells like total.
Yeah. I mean, there are some interesting things I can think of that they could do, but a lot of them are just really wild stuff. Like the reflect stuff seems like they could do some pretty interesting stuff with it. But in the end, it's always going to be a puzzle of where do I need to stand and trying to piece together what's happening on the screen and figuring that out. And I feel like I felt that a lot within the fights. It's just, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, and I just have to map it out. Where do I go stand? But they can't make it too complex. There's probably going to be a simple strategy for each one of them. But
it kind of feels like to me that they are starting to hit the limits of the current formula of raid design they have going for themselves, and they're trying to break it up and expand it a little bit to keep things interesting over the course of the next few tiers, years, whatever you want to call it.
10 years at least, I think. Yeah,
basically. They can do more stuff and more interesting stuff, because quite honestly, Final Fantasy in terms of raid design and mechanic design is very limited compared to other MMOs.
I would love to hear everybody's thoughts on that.
I'm kind of wondering what you more mean by that entirely. Like,
I know exactly what you mean.
Because I haven't played as many other MMOs.
The way that Final Fantasy's like game design in general, like just the whole game, not even just the raid design, is it's very formulaic and like, it's very like predictable and consistent, which isn't a bad thing, right? Because that means it works every time, right? Like it's working. Why would they change it, right? Just keep making it work the same way, because it's very successful. They're still growing, and that probably has something to do with how like the 1.0 version of the game failed, and they had to remake it. And after they remade it, it was really successful, and they're like terrified, like, okay, this time it works. Don't change a thing.
It's kind of the thing. Like the most straightforward examples I could give is compared to World of Warcraft. You have in Narrlocke, I think, Sfia, you probably remember the football boss. You push around an orb to shoot a goal during the boss fight, and
seen that, yeah.
I don't see mechanics like that really happening in Final Fantasy. To be fair, there's probably some stuff in the Alexander raids that I don't remember because I wasn't playing back then. Because I remember some bombs being kicked around. But yeah, that's not in the current formula of design, and yeah, it just
I would say
Whenever-
that.
yeah.
I'm sorry,
I
go
think
on.
they're trying to
Oh, yeah,
crack.
I would say that back in Realm Reborn and Heavensward, they were more creative, but it feels like as things got more popular, whether it be because of or completely separate to the raids, they kind of found whatever they did in Stormblood. They were like, "This is it. This is the way that we do
Yeah.
things now forever." It's why a bunch of people call Shadowbringer Stormblood 2 and Endwalker Stormblood 3, because in terms of gameplay, they're really, really functionally similar. But yeah, going back, they had a much more, they built 2.0 off of, a lot of playing WoW as well, and hugely inspired by that. And that showed in the raid design as well, where things were more creative. You had more agency over the fights, which doesn't happen so much anymore.
But the obvious downside, and you probably need to bring this up in the whole discussion, is that if you are a little bit more experimental, like World of Warcraft is, for example, then there's more fights that are just going to be flops. They're not going to be very well received, that are not going to be as fun for a lot of players, and in general, you're going to have more misses in your roster of raid fights, bosses, trials, etc. And compared to, since Final Fantasy does release a fairly limited amount of bosses, you get four savage bosses, maybe an ultimate, and an extra per cycle, basically. That's basically half the amount of bosses. So I can definitely see why they are sticking to this formulaic version of encounter design. And yeah, I mean, it's down to personal taste, right? But
But
I'm super curious where they're gonna go with it.
that's a really big point, that they have like a higher quantity of bosses so they can afford taking more risks on some of them. Because if there was one boss in our Savage tier that was just so awful that like everyone hated it, and it happened to be like the third, yeah, exactly. A bunch of people hated like the orange and on orange for Phoenix. That's not only a quarter of the raid tier, but it's on a fight that people will probably spend like a third of the total time in the raid tier on. It's harder to take risks like that.
That's fair. I will say they are very experimental in the types of content they put out, but once they have a content down, like locked down, they're like, yeah, this is how we do it. Like they come out with different things that have completely failed, and then they eventually succeed in something, like the evolution of Eureka, right? And how that turned into some of the last kind of open world stuff that we had that everybody seemed to love a lot. So it's our Truckable Racing, apparently. Maybe they'll have another one. I don't know, man. Since it's implemented, they haven't touched it. Go ahead.
I'm wondering how much, like, obviously, I agree with everyone about the 4 fights, and that's very, very much so limiting them, and them trying to stay successful with everything they do. But I wonder how much difficulty plays a role into this, because from what I've seen from Square Enix, going all the way back to their first MMO, Final Fantasy XI, they can be creative. But every time they've tried to be creative in the past, it leads to imbalance, where something just not, like, the thing will be functional, but it just might not always work for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You could see things like the Gobwalker when they tried that in A2.
Great.
I think that fight's terrible, but some people love the Gobwalker. Some people hated it because it had to change up the whole game.
The Godwalker.
It was amazing. I did the Godwalker as a machinist, so I didn't even care.
Yeah. I know people that hated doing it. Some people love doing it, but it like changes up how you have to play your class. It's like not what they signed up for. And then some people were forced to do that role. That doesn't always work. And let's say you're in a pug, and there might be someone who practiced their class so much, but now you're changing up how the gameplay works. And now what's the success rate going to be that they're doing something completely different that they have no context of anywhere else in the game? And they can't just sit down and play around with it for a while. Like, even if they're in a learning party, they're going to try to do it, but they can't play with it in isolation to really learn how it works. And I think that might play a role into why they don't really take a lot of risk. Which is kind of a shame, but it is what it is.
What I can also imagine, since we were talking about this massive spike in players, and you had the big migration of WoW players starting up Final Fantasy, and a lot of them, well, to be fair, sticking to the game as well. you have a massive influx of new players that are gonna bring in different kinds of feedback to the game as well on the current system, on the current design patterns. So maybe Square Enix is just at a little bit of a pathway where they need to figure out, okay, with this massive influx we just got, where do we go from here to keep people happy? Maybe that's a lot of the factors we can see right now in this patch.
Although I will guarantee
Tiny?
you,
Go on.
I'll just say I guarantee you that they have probably in their office 1,000,000,001 raid mechanics that they just came out
Just
with,
in their office on
wrote it-
shelves. They're like,
yeah, like they
Yeah.
they wrote them out on paper, and at some point they're gonna come back to them for inspiration and influence. Because when you have a good idea, you're gonna write it down, and then you're gonna run it by another team, and then they're gonna be like, "Hey, can we do this? Do we have the tech for it? Do we have the time? Does this make sense?" And they're gonna give a yes, no, and then some of the people say, "Shelve this. We'll come back to it later because it's not the right time for it." But this is not a bad idea. Like, I'm sure the carbuncle thing might have had something to do with that
that's
at some point.
You know what? That's completely possible. I'm just trying to envision them having these little board meetings, just sitting around, and be like, "Hey guys, here's this list of mechanics. No, yes, no, yes, no, yes," and they throw them in different piles and just call it a day.
Sometimes
I was
they
gonna
design
say-
bosses by sticking a bunch of notepads to a dartboard.
That works too.
Yeah, I was going to say, pertaining more to this raid tier coming up, it feels like, Lythi, you specifically, you're pretty sure that nothing's going to be new. There's not going to be too creative, too inventive. And I'm trying to think about the most recent tiers we've had with Asphodelos and then DSR. And both of those were incredibly Final Fantasy fights.
Yes.
Like through and through. Like DSR it's all about snapshotting, cast bars. It's all about downtime, trio type mechanics, all of this stuff, which feels like the way in which Final Fantasy is played now, but it wasn't necessarily so much before. So going into this next tier, how inventive are they going to be realistically, given that that's what we've had so far this expansion? I don't have the highest of hopes.
Quite honestly, I don't think they're gonna change the formula for Savage for the second tier of the expansion. It might be something they'd tackle a little bit earlier into an expansion where they throw in maybe a trial or two on the way to the tier to try some new stuff. Fights that are not as important as a full raid tier, to kind of test the waters before they go ham on a new formula. Because, yeah, I mean, just talk about a business standpoint. Like, why would you sink a whole ship on an experiment if you can just test a little like rowing boat?
Oh yeah, and you know what? The thought just came to me is that the Savage has worked the way it has for a while. The player base likes it the way it is now. It's successful, so that's here to stay, right? But they are trying new stuff. They have the new Criterion dungeons out. They have like the Bazia and Eureka stuff. Like, they do experiment, but it's always off to the side. They definitely prefer to go wide than deep in this kind of design. If that makes sense.
Did you hear what they said about the Criterion dungeon? Like the difficult one's boss, like relative difficulty? That the first boss, because there's 3 bosses in a dungeon, first one's like a Savage 1.5, the second one's a Savage 2 or 3, and then the third boss is like a Savage 4 difficulty? That's insane for a 4-man. Yeah, that's what he said.
Did they say that?
Yeah. It's making me really fucking excited for it.
Can't get carried now by 7 other people.
I'm not
kind of
tracking it, guys. I'm not tracking shit.
Frosty, do it.
I think if they were to try and experiment with the raids, they would somehow try to do it by adding a 5th fight. But also only do
what
it
do you
after
mean?
Final
They've already
Fantasy
done that.
6. No, not turn 3. Shut up.
No, they've already done that with door bosses on every raid for the last couple years.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
That's a whole rant.
That's fair. Door bosses can kind of count. But I meant like that, like maybe they'll add another fight by like just moving around some of the loot or something, and but only will do this after like Final Fantasy 16 is out and they get to merge the teams again before they start work on their next game.
Copium, as if they're not gonna immediately stick them on a new game.
Do you think so? I don't. I'm pretty sure that's not announced anywhere, right? Sindalf. They didn't like. I mean, they took Soken and Yoshida, but they didn't really take like multiple members of the team to go work on Final Fantasy 16.
Well, any sort of like big development project or creative project, you will take people who are experienced, can get the work done, things like that, who also want to do something new creatively, and they will be put on a new project. Not just because they want to be, but also because they're the people you can trust in the company to get the work done. Especially when it's a video game and you got millions of dollars riding on it, and because that's kind of what games take to make nowadays. During early development, you may not need everybody because you'll be in pre-production, but once you get further into it, you'll probably need those individuals. And then when they're done, unless the other thing is like in a place where they can start working, you need to do something with them if you're not going to be like, hey, go take a month off. Probably doesn't sound like a thing they would do. Sounds like they would be like, okay, go back to 14 for like a little bit, and then you can go back to the next game when we need you.
Okay.
That's what I assume is happening.
It's impossible without them telling us.
That's a pretty common thing in the industry. It's like actually a really big problem how some roles have more consistent workload than others. That's one of the reasons why, in like the console generations, like one or two generations ago, how games would come out and they would have like DLC immediately, like day one DLC. That was their solution to the problem of having all like the gold copy of the game printed and they're shipping it out and getting it ready. But they still have all those people working that don't have any work to do. Like artists or whatever. They have to give them something to do, right? That's a really common problem.
Okay. We'll see. All right. You make good points, but I don't want to believe that they just like completely are going to shit on Final Fantasy 14 a little bit with resources to make Final Fantasy 16. I don't know if I want to live in like a dream world or something else, but I just don't want to.
I mean,
they had to take
aren't we at
people.
that point where 16 is like way past the point that they take up massive numbers of devs anyway? I mean, they're already deep into localization and stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like they're at the stage where most of the devs are suddenly going to disappear from 14 to work on 16.
Anyways, holy crap, we've barely touched this, like, the conversations that we had planned for the
You
show.
can ask Yoshi P when you finally get to interview him in person on stream.
I'm sorry,
Man.
Frosty. This happens every time I come on your show.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, when I have the MogTalk on stage and when FanFest returns, we can do it. Anyways, Savage Fight, we won't go into details, but general comments of like, are you excited for like what the transition from normal to Savage will be? Is there anything just like overarching like general statements that won't give away strategy or anything else that you might want to say about it?
Got one.
Sure.
I really hope the cutscene and P5S isn't there.
Yeah.
I don't want to
we
get
all-
down for the count and sit there and watch the boss eat a slime again and for the 17th time in a row. Just don't do it to me, please.
Or they'll pull a Shiva and add a brand new cutscene for you to watch.
Or that. I'd rather not have that one either.
Oh my god. I mean, they did it for, what was it? Well, that was actually E1S, right? So it's not unheard of for them to put cutscenes in the first fight of the tier.
I'm hoping that this is usually when when a tier comes out and like content comes out with it, usually the fights seem to like get designed in cycles, and I'm hoping this like cycle of content, because in the X trial the cutscenes cut out, right? They just turned it into a short animation. I hope that happens for all these fights.
Okay. We'll see. What else we got about the normal fights going into Savage that it's okay to talk about? Is that pretty much it?
I think the big thing, I mean, it's just what people should expect is... The biggest thing is just there's going to be an increased tempo. They actually do... The difference between normal mode and Savage is usually like they'll take some of the same exact mechanics they'll either give you the exact same thing in harder situations, or like if you look at the second fight, for example, all throughout that fight, the second fight this tier, all throughout that fight, there's stuff all over the ground, and they're like eventually flipping from one side of the room to the other. But the thing is, they're like usually pretty symmetrical for a majority of it. If you start removing that symmetry, that alone messes with people's minds enough that it makes it way harder for them to like think about and handle it. That's a thing. That's one thing. And then just increase the tempo of it. Just make things faster. Dude, those two things, like tempo especially, just throws people off their game so hard. Make things bigger, increase the tempo, just do a little bit of augments to the mechanics a little bit. That alone can take an easy fight and make it very difficult. Also, if you get a damage down, you just die.
So just to make sure I understand right, you're saying going from normal to savage, it's going to be harder.
I mean, yeah, but it's like what makes it harder?
No, I gotcha. I'm sorry.
Because
Oh no.
I think a lot of people do underestimate what tempo means for this game. You take like so many people are not used to like high speed stuff, and the moment you put them in that situation, they just lose their mind.
Okay, keep in mind with just like the tier that everybody who is going to be world racing in this fight, in this raid tier coming up, has just done his DSR, which is extremely high tempo, the hardest execution-wise fight in the game. I don't think that's going to be as severe an issue as you think it will be.
I don't think it'll be an issue for the
That's
World Prog
definitely more of
players.
a
Well, not
like PF. That's PF, right? I thought this was the world race show.
I do think that is a good point, that like there have been people who've been doing DSR and they have been getting used to that fight, even if they're not like super world race, hardcore players. They're getting used to that kind of tempo, and then they're like, hey, let me try Savage, it's only a day or two, and they're gonna have that kind of mentality going into it. So that's not a bad point. So even if it's taken them like 2 months to clear it, they still have that mindset that has developed over those 2 months, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I have one for the difficulty.
Sure.
Because Mr. Jeeth had a certain request recently. I think it was, I'm not sure which DSR mechanic it was, where you have the eyes during all the bullshit going on. I think it's Death of the Heavens. He was asking for the eyes to rotate during it. So I'm hoping Jeeth gets some rotating eyes during some mechanic.
Maybe.
That's literally in normal mode EP8 right now. He shoots the snakes into the ground, and the eyeballs pop up over them, and they're just like wiggling all over the room, and then they pop up and gaze you.
Yep,
that's literally already a mechanic.
I'm very much aware. It's gonna be absolutely glorious. I can't wait.
Ask and you shall receive.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the competition overall with the world race and everything else. You guys are amazing players, 100%. We know you're going to go hardcore and go at it. But besides, the teams that are on the show, what are the teams that are out there that you're worried about or thinking, wow, they were going to do like an amazing job?
I've personally been actively not looking at other teams so much because it's like, I talked about this a little bit earlier before, but it's not a PvP experience, right? Sure, you're trying to go faster than the other group, but however they perform has absolutely no bearing on you. So thinking about that too much, it can only be distracting. It can only really be a bad thing. I guess the only situation which it's possibly a positive is if you find out that you're ahead. And it's like, yes, it's good. It's a motivation booster. But every other situation, it's only bad. So yeah, I actively am trying not to look at it, but there's always, the threat of the JP supergroup, right? Yeah. They're just going to get the best players, and they're just going to come and absolutely wipe the floor with this raid tier. So I'd expect that. Yeah.
And there's
I'm that person who checks Twitter. I'm the person who checks Twitter in between clears. My group hates me
I
for
hope
it.
Sfia and Sindalf do well.
I do too.
Yeah.
He said well, not necessarily better than them.
I know.
Okay. Not worried. You're just hoping that you do good, right? Yeah. But I guess there's for sure Aether Group 4 out there now.
Wait, what's Ether Group 4, Frosty?
Group from Aether, man. It's it's the fourth one.
Yeah, those guys are cool.
right.
I know some of them. They're very cool guys.
Yeah. I know some of them as well, and I'm hoping they do well.
They
Not as well as us, but I hope they do well.
They
I hope they
are.
win.
Go ahead.
That was it. I hope they win.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sure. And then Kana will come on and then just like completely say some stuff that will get MogTalk canceled from the entire universe. All right, that's what I expect to happen. But 100%, they are a group that's been extremely strong and that everyone's following. And I don't think. What was the group called before? It was the meme name to give me shit.
Ether Group 3?
No, it was before Aether Group 2, right?
Ether Group 2.
All right. Well, they're coming. They're coming, and they're going to be a strong team to look out for. And I think there's definitely some really strong streaming teams that are out as well. I know there's like streaming teams that are going to try to get world first as a stream team too. So it is kind of excited to see that. What was it? I'm not going to call them out because I don't want to make them feel nervous. It's just conversations I've had with some of the groups. They are going extremely hard. Krill is going again, and Krill has got like world second. Which one was it? It was the ultimate. God, I can't remember for some reason in my head. Was it the Alexander one?
No, that was Moof.
It was Moof that got that one.
Yeah.
They got world second. I'm trying to remember. God, was it Promise? Was it Promise that they got second on?
Might have been. I'm looking at your list. It
Yeah,
was
Check
Promise.
the official Frosty Bog
MogTalk.org.
race spreadsheet tier
Yeah.
list.
Oh, by the way, I probably should buy .com, but I just don't want to spend $3,000 on getting that domain. So it's going to be .org right now because it just seems kind of ridiculous, and it's never going to go down. It's just going to keep going up. They're going to keep trolling me, whoever owns it, to try to get whatever money they can out of me. But .org is fine. Let me look at this list just real quick.
How are you gonna feel, Frosty, if Horny on Main wins?
See, here's the thing. If Horny on Main does good, it means we have to put Horny on... Maybe we need to figure that out. Maybe we'll just call him HOM or something on stream. Like, label it that way. Because it is a good team.
Our leaderboard doesn't censor.
I mean, there is some level of censor that I will put on there. I
just got off the phone with our producers, Frosty. We can't censor the leaderboard. Sorry.
Okay. I'll remember that. Let me see.
I love looking at these names, by the way. They're always one of my favorite things of the tier. Just the names people come up with.
I do my best, by the way, to not be too over. There's more teams, by the way. I haven't put it on here yet. I haven't put that on there yet because I just haven't had time. A lot of them come in around the end. But I try not to enforce too much crazy stuff. But if they say some really horrible stuff as their name, I have to not put it on there. So there are some, and you don't see them, but they're.
Can we get the Frosty trash bin someday?
No, because I don't know if my stream will get banned from it. Some stuff's
reckon
really gross.
If they put in a gross name, you just have complete liberty to change it to whatever you feel like.
That's what Kira does on FFXIV. If there's some stupid name that's 8 sentences long, he'll just change the name to something like "knock this off" or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had to do that. Actually, I think I have done that in the past where I have changed the name because they want it to spell out penis or something, and I was like, you know what? I think that might be it. I don't think that I want that to be a team name, and so I just had to get it changed. Most teams are accommodating, and I'm like, hey, this is kind of near the edge of what's acceptable. Can we just change it to something else, and they change it?
I mean, what else are they gonna do? They either say yes and change it, or they say no, and then you just remove it.
No, I'll leave it on there. I'll just call it no name or something, right? Or I'll say question marks. I put something else on there. just to make it a little bit more acceptable. Because I do want to recognize that they've cleared something, but I can't. I don't know. Are you guys going to be so excited the day that I don't do this anymore and it's not manual and there's like some official automated program to handle all this bullshit?
I'll be very honest with you, Frosty. I think the one mostly celebrating is going to be you.
I think it's kind of charming how there's usually like a 6-hour period during the race where nothing's getting updated because you're asleep.
Yeah, it depends on the race. Ultimate for sure that happens during Ultimate.
We're all in the dark and then someone sees, oh, it's updating, he's awake.
I put a little Dragon Ball Z like Goku sleeping thing on there. Yeah,
I did mention earlier that I wanted to talk about this. It's come all around to it. Sleep in this fight is going to be weird. Very, very weird. We're getting a 2-hour delayed start, which the raiders are going to actively be awake for, because you got to get your tomes, because you got to get your gear. And then you're going to get to the end of the day and have a really tough decision about, do I sleep now? And then you got the decisions of, oh, we have more gear, so hitting, like, the enrage grind won't be as hard. You've got just so many factors to go on, and it's going to be impossible. I'm already like dreading it, and it's days away.
So you do actually have a fear that it's going to be long enough to where you are going to have to start debating if you need to go to sleep or not.
Second and third tier, when was the last time that it wasn't 2 days? Kefka.
Kefka. That's actually what I'm afraid of, Kefka specifically.
But if you had 1 week beforehand, you saw all the normal fights, and you had the gear and everything else, and you were prepped to go in, do you think Kefka would have died a lot quicker? And you wouldn't have
Kefka died day one. Shiva would be the best example of comparison,
Shiva,
yeah. So there is still like a kind of comparable delay in time because you got to do the normal modes previously, right? So your time is already set back a little bit. The first fights may take a little longer because you're not absolutely destroying them because you don't have crafted gear until, partway through the second fight usually. And then the bigger thing though is, as you were saying, that the normal mode experience. So I don't think it completely cancels it out, but if you're looking to kill Shiva end of day one, I don't know if that's a thing. What do you guys think?
I think they could have done it. Didn't we?
Again, it's such a hard decision, right?
Didn't we see in Rage, or we were like at the end of the fight, at the end of day one?
We saw the end of, like, we saw, what do you call it? The mechanic right before it. We got through it with like corpse running, essentially. Worms Lament 2.
Yeah, so like,
so
we know that if we just played a little better, we could have done it. Like, made it to the end, and then we would have had that discussion.
Right, but at that point, after 18 hours, getting that enrage grind is really hard, right?
It is. And I'm actually think this happened to us in Kefka. Because Kefka was a tier where, like, wheelchair cleared, and then the other two groups came 1 hour after, and then the hour after. But only 3 groups cleared day one, and all of them were, like, dead tired. And because of the gear, because of everything, because of the gear, because of no normal mode, and because I just think the player base has actually gotten much better, although I think the content has gotten a little harder to compensate for that. I'm starting to think that as long as there isn't the one really wall mechanic, if a group is able to get past that quickly, then they're going to have this problem at the end of the day, where they're going to have to choose, do we sleep and potentially wake up to a dead boss, which I've done in Uwu before. We were on Enrage, went to sleep, woke up, it was dead. Not a good feeling, by the way. It's terrible. Any group that experiences that, they're going to hate themselves forever for it. Or do you keep trying, but you're tired, and you know the more you wipe, the more tired you're getting, and the more time you've wasted. So if you go to sleep now, you're even further behind than when you were, and it's just the most stressful thing in the world, where it's kind of like this boss has to die now, or it's not dying at all, and we just lose. Unless you're just that much ahead of everyone.
I feel like I can make a click adventure game that would simulate this experience, where you say, do you sleep, do you not sleep, and then there's a % chance of which way would like benefit you. You have to make decisions along the way and see if you can actually get world first or not. I don't know why, but I feel like it would do pretty good.
But we also know from Shiva, we stayed up way too late on that day. We stayed up way too late, and I remember looking through footage, like, we kind of limped through Icelit Dragon Song. We got further into the fight, but the amount of time it took us to get through each mechanic was just increasing and increasing to the point where, yeah, we could make it to the end of the fight, but there's no way we were killing it at that point, and we should have just went to bed like 4 hours earlier. And then maybe the whole tier would have went different.
I've definitely had that experience before in one of my last groups. Like we weren't like getting world first or anything, but there's definitely that experience I'm sure a lot of people have had if they're like ever raced, where you decide to stay up too late and then you go like an extra lockout, and the entire lockout is just basically a gigantic waste of time because everyone's like just making all kinds of mistakes.
Yeah, and the funny thing is you don't always realize you're making those mistakes.
Yeah,
I remember when we were doing Iceland Dragon Song, I would actually stand in the ice and I would get a damage down every pull, and I never noticed because I was too damn tired. The healers were just adjusting, but they never said anything. So we'd do that whole mechanic, and I'm doing it wrong, but everyone's too tired to say anything.
Yeah, that's the point where you need to go to sleep. 100%. That's like the line. If you're looking for like a clear sign of when you need to stop. But that being said, too, there is expected to be a door boss here, so we're adding in like that extra layer of things that would be different than Shiva, right? Because Shiva, a big part of difficulty is you always had to do that beginning part, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to say because if it is a door boss, they typically then mean like a combined longer total fight time that you need to progress. So an example like Alphascape. No. Yeah, Alphascape was the last one. The first fight is like 6.5 minutes, and then the second fight was like 10:30 or something. So you're looking at about 17 minutes of combined fight time, which compared to, I mean, sure, I had a repeat in the middle, so a few of those minutes aren't exactly super difficult, but they're still progression points. Compare that to Shiva, you got 14 minutes of fight time. Right? So overall, you're having to progress less of a fight if there's no door boss. So that time difference may not actually, like the door boss may not make it shorter, it may actually make it longer.
Okay, that's a thought. Well, there is a handful more things I want to go over, and I know I'm like, having your time here is kind of, I feel bad because I'm taking away sleep and everything right before the race, so I don't want to take too much more of your time. I think, around 2 hours is pretty good. But I do want to go and just ask you guys, doing this whole world race show and everything else, is there anything else that you guys would want to dive into about the world race that's happening soon that you feel is worth talking about?
I don't remember. I think I had something on my mind earlier and I forgot.
Okay, that's fine. Chat's
Okay,
making fun of me for saying that's a thought. Go ahead.
I got a super quick question. If the difficulty is modeled and some unexpected teams make a world first, if there's a on-stream world first clear, would that motivate you guys a little bit more to consider streaming?
It probably
would
would.
change anything for us. Maybe.
Yeah. I think I know from my group at least, I think the reason that we're probably not going to actually doesn't really have much to do with first. It's just because there were some people who were just uncomfortable being on stream.
Okay,
that's more than fair.
I think it would push those who would who were on the fence, who are like, yeah, we kind of want to do it, yeah, we don't. I think it would push them closer to the yeah, let's do it aisle because somebody else did it. Even though like it doesn't change any of the negative points of streaming or any of that, I think it would push some of them over, and that might just give a group like a majority rule if like 6 out of 8 might want to stream. And then
I'm of
like,
the
what do you
opinion
do
that
with those two?
if it's not 8 out of 8, you just don't do it, right? Which is why I think that it probably wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, but I'm always the one in half our discussions who are just like, everyone's like, oh yeah, let's do this. I'm like, no, I don't think we should. And should you not do something because one person doesn't want to?
Yes.
I'd say it's debatable.
Something that's that, like, it changes it that drastically. It's that much of a dynamic shift, and
I mean, you could
I
break
think
a group
absolutely
apart.
needs to be unanimous.
I mean, you'd lose if you guys lost someone in TPS. Like, you've been pretty consistent so far, but if you lost like a person or two because of that kind of decision, would that kind of kill TPS?
We've already lost MT. How's he doing, Narrlocke? Everyone's replaceable.
Okay.
But I think if it came down to that, people just wouldn't stream then. Like, nobody's gonna do that. Like, if it came down to that, people would probably just not stream.
Okay. Well, that was a good question.
Sorry.
We got a good clip out of it. That being said, is there anything else on your guys' mind? Besides wanting more sleep?
We can
I'm
think
just
of.
thinking about the carbuncle eating the slime. He's hungry boy.
Just so random. I really wasn't expecting that.
I really like the carbuncle boss. That's what I'm thinking about right now. I think it's really cool. I'm kind of sad it's the first turn, so his mechanics are gonna be as cool as they could have been.
Yeah. No, it's going to be a cool intro for a lot of people who want to just do some savage stuff, and they might not go into later tiers. They'll be able to have at least one cool fight, right? Or later fights in that tier. All right. Well, before we go, I do want to talk about the World Race event that we are doing on this channel. We're going to go live 1 hour before, I guess, Savage's release, not before server up, I guess. And we're going to have kind of a pre-show where we talk just a little bit about the event and everything. And we are planning for 24 hours. I don't think that we're going to go over 24 hours. We'll see what the resources look like and how close we are.
In theory, we can go for up to 48. That should work, but I'm gonna start sweating if it goes beyond 24, man.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
It's stitching all that stuff together for an event like that is just rough. I mean, technically all you need for a stream is one person who can stream, and you're good. But to create like a decent event, it's a little bit more work. So we'll see how that works. If it hits 48 hours, it's going to be a little rough. 24 hours is kind of what we're hoping, at least for this tier, with all the expectations that we've seen. So that's the core that we've planned. And for those who aren't familiar with the event, it's basically us having permission to restream some of the channels of the players who are going really hard at the content and discussing the world race as we're tracking it and things that are happening in the background. Even though some of the most amazing teams, they're not streaming, we can still cover that and the information that we have in front of us, through Clee's tweets and stuff like that. So we do our best to cover it, and it's always exciting and fun. And we raise it. We do it for a charity. This time we're doing it for Direct Relief, who works with humanitarian efforts to help poverty-stricken communities and war-torn communities. Like, they've done a lot of stuff for Ukraine recently as well. So we're going to be raising money for them. And this goes into another announcement: is the prizes that we have for this event. And I have a little thing to show on the screen. So give me a second. Give me a second for that. Ta-da! There we go. Donation incentives. If you donate any entry at all, you'll get up to $50 a Mog Station as a reward. Then $20 or more, you get entered in a possible art commission from someone in the community. We're still working out the details, so more information on that as we get to it.
It's gonna be some really cool art.
Yep.
I can promise that.
And our grand prize is a PlayStation 5. If you donate $50 or more, you get entered automatically for that. And it's actually going to be signed, right, Sindalf?
I mean, my handwriting is atrocious. So if you don't want me to sign it, I won't. If they don't want me to. But I will if they want me to.
Yeah. Sindalf is providing this PlayStation 5. This is sitting in his room, and he'll do whatever you want him to do to it before he sends it out. Yeah.
Monka toss.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to know what he's gonna do to it.
So, this
I've seen his Twitter.
See why? Why, Frosty?
This is amazing donation incentive, and I wasn't expecting this at all, and I really do appreciate it. Send off. It means a lot. You're always helping and support the stream a lot.
I ended up a couple months ago. Friend wanted a PS5, so we both got in the same queue for it, and we both got one. And now I'm like, I have a PS5. What am I gonna do with this? So it's been sitting there in the box in the corner of my room for a while now, and I'm like, maybe I'll give it out on my stream at some point, but I don't really have a reason for it. Do it, and then I was like, oh wait a minute, give it to Frosty.
That's awesome, man.
So it's been sitting there unopened the whole time, and now I finally get to learn how to be an adult and send a package because I've never done that in my life.
That's ridiculous. I'll help you. We'll work together on it. But yeah, we'll get that going, and it should be an exciting stream. Again, we're doing this all to get together the community, try to create some sort of platform for the World Race community for Final Fantasy XIV, as well as try to raise money while we have that platform for a good charity. So I'm excited for it. It's going to be really exhausting. I wasn't here for Ultimate, so this is me getting back on the saddle to try to get this going again, and I'm going to be tracking it just like I've done before. I've made some improvements to the website to hopefully stop it from crashing like it did last time. But we'll see, because it's really intense for a little podunk me web developer to make something that people can't crash, but we'll find out. Either way, it's going to be really exciting. I hope you guys, if you want to track it, the race and everything else, join us for the stream just so we can hear people talk shit and have a good time commentating over the streams that we're watching. And also just doing the whole like, oh, where's TPS at? You know, where's Neverland? What boss have they cleared? Oh, are they streaming? Can you point me to their stream? And we could just do that for like most of the entire show.
I'll just say, Frosty, I really hope you stream for more than 24 hours because I want to watch when we're done with the fight.
Oh, you think we're done in 24 hours? Bro.
No, I said that's why I said after 24 hours.
Yeah, we're not done in 24 hours. We're finishing end of day 2. We have to make the sleep decision day 1 and day 2 because we think we're at the end and they bring out the secret 5th boss.
Yeah,
I'd lose my mind.
Which also has a door boss.
Yeah, exactly.
I would actually just lose my mind because I'm going to be honest. I mean, you know this, Sfia, but Promise, I didn't think was a door boss. I thought that was the actual boss.
Yeah, I
and
know.
Then it just kept, and then it just kept going.
We should get a Yu-Gi-Oh crossover where we fight 5 pieces of Exodia as 5 bosses.
Yeah, that could work. It could work.
Yeah.
And thank you for everybody who donated to this test run of the stuff that we're doing with Twitch. I don't think we're going to use it, but I just want to make sure I understood what it was. So for future events that we can possibly use it, maybe it'll be a better alternative. We will be using another donation program, I think, for it, so we can better track stuff and do better widgets with it, because I don't think this is fully fleshed out, but we wanted to test it. So yeah, we raised $121 during the show for direct relief. So thanks, guys. That being said, I think that's it. We'll go around through the rounds. Final words, all that great stuff. Shout outs, anything that you want to say. We'll start with Narrlocke. Narrlocke again.
Oh, I just wanted to say, when we cleared Dragon Song, somebody on 4chan said my glamour was bad, so I changed it.
Okay. Is that all you wanted to say before?
Yeah, that was it. It was really bothering me. I had to get that off my chest.
Okay. All right. Guys, please follow Narrlocke in any way that you can. His name is unique enough that I think it's exactly the same, both Twitch and Twitter. Spelled exactly the same. 2 R's. 2 R's in it. Sfia?
Just thanks. Always love being on the show. A lot of fun shooting the shit. I'm really excited for the race. Like, we usually complain about not having this enough, and now it's been, 3 tiers in the last 8 months now? It's pretty rapid fire. So yeah, I love it. I just hope that everybody else enjoys the tier as well. Should be good.
Cool, man. And guys, please follow Sfia. He's Sfia everywhere except for Twitter, where he's FFXIV. It's a little bit hard because if you type in FF and an S, it tries to go to some soccer thing. Or no, you type in like Sfia, it goes to some soccer thing, I think. So you just remember to put the FF in front of it. I've done that too many times. Sindalf?
Yeah, similar thing. Like, really, thank you for having me on.
Yeah.
I actually thought, when I was told, I thought you were having Keo on instead than me. So this was a surprise.
He
So
literally said, the first like I asked Keo, I was like, hey, is anyone available? He's like, yeah, Sindalf seems interested. That's literally what he told me. He said nothing about him coming on.
The message he sent me seemed to imply him and Sfia, and I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. They're more articulate than I am. But at the same time, I love talking, as you might know. So thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, of course.
And for this race, I am trying everything in my power to not be dead weight this time.
If you're a dead weight, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't still be on the team, right?
Debatable.
We all play video games for fun.
We all
Doesn't
play
have
it
to
for
be that brutal all the time.
Oh, okay.
all the time, but there's the 2-day
Sometimes.
period where it has to be.
All right. Lythi.
Yeah, it was awesome being here. Thank you so much for having me. I like having a good reason to stay up until 3 a.m. in the morning. This is definitely one of the better ones. No, other than that, super excited for the race. I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I enjoyed planning it and all the casters. And if you're wondering why your favorite streamers are not on the caster desk for the MogTalk World Race for Charity, please tell them to message me. I'd love to bring them on the desk. I just don't know that many people in the Final Fantasy community. I don't know as many as I probably need to. But if they message me, I can get them on the desk, and that would be great. But other than that, it's going to be a great race. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. We haven't even announced a commentary list, have we? So... so they don't even know. I'll let you work on that, and we'll put the list out.
It's gonna be a lot of the same faces from last time around. So if you dig up the announcement sheet from last time around, that's basically gonna be the same thing.
I mean, we can say something about it right now. Let me see. Where's?
I mean, I can list the people if you want.
Yeah, go ahead,
That's
list them.
Wait, where's my? So obviously we got Frosty returning to the mic, which is pretty hype. I'm not gonna lie, that's awesome. We got Winlogon, who's been a staple of the World Race broadcast for a while now. Well, I'm gonna be back there. We got Carrix, Lindsay joining us again. We have a few new faces like Ryla and Flickdrop and Zerva, who have been players for themselves for quite a while, but are trying casting for the first time around. Really nice people. It's going to be good fun. Jess, or Nanny, as she's known nowadays, will be joining us. Rookery is going to be there. High Jump and Muni and Revan are going to give us a analytical power hour at some segment, so that's going to be exciting. And to round it out, we have Sam Talks. I'm not sure if I mentioned him already. We got Darian Hart. Casa is, of course, going to join us. And yes, that's all of them, unless I forgot someone, in which case I am going to be sweating in just a few minutes.
Yeah. It's just to let you know, we are completely open to get commentary, but this is a voluntary thing where people come on and volunteer their time and everything to help out. And a lot of people raid when Savage is out if they're a streamer. They don't raid day up or Ultimate as much, but for Savage it's a little bit more tricky because we have to cut into other people's time who would be raiding at that time. So
you have no idea how much I've tried to get Lamator and Rin and
just pull them out. Sfia, do you want to cast for us on?
Sfia.
I actually get like FOMO for not working on something like this every raid tier, but it's like, you know, I got to raid. I would, if I know that if I was on the show, I'd be like, I want to be in there. I want to be in there. So
Yeah.
Hey, if you got like a 10-minute raid break, 30-minute food break, give me a message. I'll pop you in for 20. No problem. Easiest.
You think we're taking breaks?
Yeah, y'all take breaks? We take like no breaks.
No, sorry.
Yeah.
It's actually very destructive.
And because I get the question in chat just now. No, sadly, Preach will not be joining us. Maybe some miracle is gonna happen, but as far as we are aware, he is too busy to sadly join us.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Who knows? Just message him and tell him to come on. No, I'm just kidding. Please don't harass this guy. But,
I've been in touch with him.
Okay.
It's not gonna work out, sadly.
Oh, it's
After if we clear fast enough, you can get Sfia on.
No, I mean, that's the plan, is that you guys clear it within 12 hours. We bring you on, and then we have you guys commentate over everyone else, you know, trying to clear.
I would do that.
That would be
if
really
I wasn't
fun.
dead tired. I actually would love to do that.
Yeah.
I've only done commentary once, and it was completely ridiculous, the whole thing. I had no idea what to say most of the time. It was outlandish, but it was a lot of fun. So I want to do it again.
Okay. I mean, of course, we have people like me on, so why wouldn't, you know, bars there. No, I'm just kidding. Meanie's great. I love Petey.
That's kind of toxic.
I love him. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for coming to watch. Thank you guys for coming on the show and taking a little bit of time away for, you know, doing this. It means a lot to have these kind of shows. And then we'll have another show, of course, after next week. I'm assuming it'll be cleared by next week, and we'll have a world race discussion. Depending on how
Probably a pretty safe assumption.
Yeah, pretty safe. Yeah. But yeah, guys, thank you again, and stay tuned. Make sure you show up for the World Race event. We'll be covering all this crap and just all this great stuff in the next 30 or so hours. All right, guys, be good, keep cool, stay frosty. Bye. Everybody say bye and wave.
Bye.
I'm waving.